Joining us to break it all down is Jen Golbeck, a computer science professor at the University of Maryland. She's also director of the MPS Data Journalism, focusing on social media, privacy, and trust on the web. So, Jen, over and over in the last several days, even in this show tonight, I had a former FBI assistant director, a former prosecutor say, what's happening with our young men? We need to find out. I mean, there's growing evidence that Tyler Robinson was radicalized online, according to both the governor and the prosecutor, even President Trump. But you say this isn't a partisan issue. We can see it on the left and on the right, and as well as apolitical radicalization. What do you mean?
So we see this thing happening online where people fall into these often unmoderated or lightly moderated spaces. So we're not talking about Facebook or Instagram or Reddit. There may be some things happening there, but people who get off those spaces and then start interacting in ones where more shocking content is encouraged, or memes, right, where you develop this language internal to your community, are developed and encouraged. And in those spaces, including in totally apolitical spaces, they're not right wing, they're not left wing, they don't really care about politics, we can see a push towards violence. And I tend to do my work in a lot of those spaces where violence is often celebrated, cheered on, and people talk about plotting it. Whether they go on to commit it is one of the hard questions that we're trying to solve. But we certainly see this across the political spectrum and outside of it online.
Yeah, we should note that not every young man who's a loner sitting in his basement playing violent video games all day long goes out to murder somebody. But we can also look at the fact that these two young men we've been talking about, Tyler Robinson and Luigi Mangione, as well as Thomas Crooks, the man who allegedly tried to kill President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, also a loner, also spent all of his time online playing video games. There's a connective tissue there. There's something in common.
Yeah, I think we have this issue of isolation, and social media, on one hand, can help alleviate that for people who are in places where they can't form a community. So you think of someone who's maybe part of a minority group, whether that's ethnic, religious, their lifestyle, in an isolated community. Social media can be a lifeline, but it can also be a place where people who are failing to connect, who aren't finding community, go and end up connecting with other people who take them in these antisocial directions. Now, we don't know if that's actually the cause for any of these individuals, but we do know, looking broadly, that there are a lot of acts of mass violence committed by young men who get radicalized in these spaces because they're failing to find community and connection and social cohesion in their offline lives.
Why is it just men who end up in these places, in these social sites?
This is a very complicated question, right? But I think part of the issue is, we have this expectation of masculinity, right? We have this view from decades ago where men could get a job, support their families, were kind of in these positions of power over their families and in society. And society has changed away from that vision. And men can feel isolated by that in a way that, women aren't. Women have their own set of problems to deal with. But if you feel like you're supposed to have this power and you're not able to achieve that, that can feel isolating, emasculating, and drive some of these young men to want to do things to regain some of that power.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.